Hello, Wilmington. Welcome to this edition of Wildcat Corner. My name is Glenn Brand, and I have the privilege and pleasure to serve as the superintendent of schools here in this great town. And on this episode, I take the great opportunity to welcome Mr. Eric Slagle, who is our town manager. Not exactly new, but still relatively new to the position. But I certainly appreciate you taking a few moments to sit down and talk a little bit about yourself, the town, and our schools. So thanks for joining me. For those that don't know, I know you've been here in Wilmington for coming up to close to a year.
Yes, and June 10th, it'll be a year, so it's 10 months.
It's right around the corner, and I'm sure that many have gotten to know you a little bit during your time here, but perhaps you could just take a few moments to share a little bit with the community and our viewers, a little bit about yourself, your background, and some of your experiences before arriving here in Wilmington.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to come and talk today. I really appreciate it. I think it's a good way to let people know a little bit about my thoughts about the town and our direction. My background, well, I don't want to go back too far, but I graduated from Northeastern Law. Just out of law school, I started working for a municipal law firm. So that time it was called Copeland and Page. Now it's KP Law, who is the town council for the town right now. So I worked for them for a few years, and then transitioned to working in Lowell in-house in their law department. That was around 2005. I worked in Lowell for almost 17 years. So in 2022, let me take a step back. I was in the law department for a few years in Lowell, and then I transitioned from the law side to the policy side, and I ran their development services department, which basically was I had planners that worked for me. We ran all of the administrative boards, so the zoning board, the planning board, the conservation commission, plus all of the building inspectors and all of the health inspectors, and all of the kind of code enforcement was under my department. So I did that for almost 10 years. And then in 2022, I decided I wanted to kind of expand my career and go into, I was hired as the town administrator in Townsend, Massachusetts. Which is a small town up near the New Hampshire border. I did that for 2 years, and then I was lucky enough to be selected to be the manager here in Wilmington. That happened, just about a year ago, and so I actually attended town meeting last year, even though
That's right.
I wasn't on the dais yet, but I did have the chance to attend town meeting and then got started in early June, and it's been a really exciting 10 months. It's really fun.
Well, I know many are glad to have you here, and myself included. We've had a chance to get to work fairly closely over the last number of months, and I know you bring a lot of experience, and I imagine that law background, I was thinking as you're explaining, that really must be a great asset for the work that you do and are asked to lead on behalf of the community. So since joining here, what you've had now close to a year to form some impressions. What's most impressed you about the town of Wilmington and the community?
Well, I think when you're in public service, you have the ability to get exposed to a lot of different parts of a community. The nonprofit sector, the kind of the local businesses, the local charitable organizations, the residents themselves. You get exposed to, you get to work with the people that work in the departments, and I've been really impressed, kind of uniformly, with what a great set of people this town has working for them. From the department head level down to the entry level people that work in the town departments, that work for the schools. I have yet to meet a person who wasn't genuinely, happy to work for the town. I think that's a culture that gets built over years and years. It's not something that just happens. Um, and it's been really thrilling coming from places that weren't necessarily that way.
Sure.
I mean, that I want to, I want to let people in Wilmington know, the people that work for you are happy to be working for you, and that's not always the case in every town. And so, I don't drive by a municipal vehicle that I don't get a wave. People want to kind of are want to tell you about their job and what they do, and I think that's been a really exciting kind of development for me to have such a talented and pleasant group of people to work with.
Coming up on the completion of my 7 years, I couldn't agree with you more. And well, obviously, in my role, I'm far closer to the folks in the school department, but the same holds true for the experiences that I've had with the interactions of many at the town level. And so I certainly echo all that your observations sort of brought to light. That's been my experience. And I think an awful lot of our community members who reside here know that, but perhaps not everyone if they don't have regular interactions. But I agree with you. It's not that way. It's not the way that you describe everywhere, for sure.
Right.
I know that we're both aware of the current work that's associated with the potential proposed school building project.
Yes.
It's become a significant focus of the town and the school department's collaboration. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but I think it'd be helpful for our viewers and members of the community to learn a little bit more about what you've come to identify as the priorities before the town that aren't related to education.
Sure. So that's a great question, and it's one of the things I've tried to highlight when I've talked about the budget making process, because when you look at a municipality, your intentions, your planning, your what you see as your priorities are laid out in the budget process. There are certain things that every town has to do. But it's the extra things that you lay out in the budget, and you try to explain, to the town why you think that makes the most sense. I've laid out three things when I talk about our budget. One of them is education, and making sure that we have appropriate, educational spaces and commitment to teachers in the town. But there are two other things that I think are really important. Number one is in this day and age, especially with the uncertainty that we have around different sources of funding, maintaining a really appropriately fiscally responsible budgeting process is really important. We need to continue to invest in our stabilization funds. We need to continue to invest money into kind of our rainy day preparations, so that if some of the uncertainty that we fear may happen comes to fruition, the town can ride it out. And so that's one of the two things that I think is really important. And the second is, to take the opportunity that we have now to reinvest in our municipal side infrastructure. So, one of those things that we've talked a lot about and is coming up at the annual town meeting at the beginning of May is North Wilmington Fire Substation.
Sure.
We made a lot of movement on that piece in the last 6 months or so. I was talking to a retired firefighter. He was on the force for 40 years. He's been retired for 15. And he said when he started on the fire department, they were talking about a North Wilmington fire substation. So it's certainly been something that the town has talked about for a really long time.
Sure.
I think we need to move forward and kind of fulfill the promises that the town has made to the residents over the years, that we can, do that substation. And then we need to look at kind of some of our other aging infrastructure. So I think we need to look at a feasibility study for a DPW barn. I think we need to look at, revisit what are we going to do about the library, and evaluate what the town needs to, set our sights on for kind of the next 50 or 100 years of municipal services, and make sure that we're setting up our infrastructure to be able to handle that.
Yeah, I think I appreciate how you map that out, and I know that those topics you mentioned have been. I quickly heard about them when I joined in my capacity as superintendent, but I think your efforts to kind of bring those together as part of a vision, certainly I'm sure will be well received and much look forward to here in the community. Sort of continuing the lines of facilities for a moment. Clearly, when you joined, Erica, back in June, one of the projects I know that you had to quickly get up to speed with was this proposed elementary school building project as part of the Massachusetts School Building Authority's program, this grant program that the town and the district are part of. Have you had an opportunity in some of your past experiences to be a part of any school building projects? And maybe you could share with viewers a little bit of what those experiences were?
Sure. So, being in the law department in Lowell, and then in development services in Lowell, I dealt with a bunch of different levels of building projects in that city, concluding with the last one I worked on was their new high school. I'm sure folks around here probably are actually aware of the new Lowell High School. At the time, it was proposed. It was the most expensive municipal school project in Massachusetts history, eclipsing some of the Newton high school buildings, which was an interesting position to be at for Lowell being the fourth largest community in the state, but also being a gateway city with lots of first generation, second generation immigrants. Being a part of that process, both the location of the high school was an educational experience, working with the OPM, working with the architect and designer. They knew they were going to do a high school, but there was a lot of options on the table for where that was going to be and what the programming was going to include, and whether they were going to do a full tear down and rebuild, or whether they were going to do an all new building at a different site, or whether they were going to do a phased construction. So that experience alone with that size of a building was really interesting to be a part of. The other building projects I've been in were mostly the rapid repair, the MSBA's rapid repair program, where you could get some state funds to assist with HVAC problems or roof problems, things that allowed Lowell at that time to try to move forward on some capital projects with help from the state that they might not have been able to do on their own. But the high school is definitely a big project. I think it was a good preparation for, being involved in the school building committee here, because it did have some of those questions about where is it going to be, and that kind of community impact of different sites. It had the question of build new or tear down, which is something I think that was in front of the school building committee here. So it was a really interesting project. And if you go and see it now, it's a beautiful building, and they're not done. They're still in the middle of renovating the old 1922 building. So.
You mentioned the core program, and I know some in our community know that Wilmington has benefited from some roof repairs and window repairs in some of our buildings, and of course, most recently, the pride and jewel of the Wilmington High School was a byproduct of this grant program, an important one in the state with the Mass School Building Authority, or MSBA. So, with this time that you landed here, there's lots of things going on at the town level, but clearly just bringing it back to the schools and the school department for a second. You, I know, joined us talking about a lot of options. That building committee had an awful lot of options that they were considering. And I know that you came in just sort of at the tail end of that, but I know have worked very hard, been a great partner as a member of that committee, and have gotten up to speed. You've learned along the way about the infrastructure, not just with the schools, but obviously all of the town buildings. I know it's an awful lot. I forget the number, but there's a lot in the community that the town oversees. I'm just curious, with the insight that you now have behind you, are you at all surprised that the building committee recommended ultimately school consolidation as a path forward?
I'm not. I think that building committee in the time before I was there and then during the time that I've been on it had a really challenging task because, one of the things you didn't have to deal with when you did the high school here in Wilmington or when I was working on the high school project in Lowell was figuring out what kind of school you're trying to build.
Right.
And so the idea of having to look, this going to be pre-K and K? Is it going to be pre-K through 3? Is it going to be pre-K through 5? That's a whole different level of questions that this school building committee had to tackle than you normally get when you're building a high school or a middle school. It's a fairly defined task.
Sure.
I think the reason why consolidation, I think, was appealing and was ultimately chosen. And the reason why I think the committee, even though they may not have fully agreed on what sort of consolidation they wanted, I think the vast majority of that committee thought that consolidation made sense. It's a purely financial,
Sure.
challenge. You've got we got lucky as a town. We got into the MSBA program very quickly after we put our statements of interest in. That doesn't always happen. And we had 6 elementary schools. People talk about this as being kind of a one elementary school project, but in reality, there were 6 elementary schools that were put forward.
That's
one
right.
of them was chosen as the main one, but
That's
I think the town understood there were six problems that needed to be solved.
Yeah.
And the chances of us in the next, 20 years getting 6 projects through MSBA, very slim.
Right.
Right. And so we had the opportunity as a town, as a committee, to kind of get the best bang for our bucks in state dollars, and knowing that program is so competitive, and knowing that the needs of the town were so apparent across the 6 schools. I think consolidation, in my mind, from a purely dollars and cents,
Right.
because I defer to the schools on the educational program, but from purely dollars and cents, it made fiscal sense to try to do a consolidation.
And I appreciate the reminder, which is very true, that we when we put forward these applications, we sort of signaled to the MSBA, hey, we've got a number of buildings, 6 that are up there in years, and all really need some improvements. And that was, as I know we both know, that's the school committee and select board's vote to say we support that view, and we're interested in what the MSBA will, what their view is. And as you said, they recognize that. They recognize also that the town is a great partner, as demonstrated through the high school project. And so, but it's a great place to be, but one that, as you said, not all communities find themselves in right away, and can take a lot of years. And we both know, having worked in different communities, Wilmington is not unique, and unfortunately over time, with so many public buildings, allowing time to pass and not enough opportunity and certainly financial resources to attend to all those facilities. But 6 it's a large number. And I'm also thinking about the fact that I know that when I joined, the facilities master plan in the community was just coming to a close. And sort of, as you were talking about the fire substation, maybe not for as long of a period of time, but the idea of consolidation, the idea of bringing together some of our smaller schools under one roof, because of, from an educational standpoint, from a family standpoint, some other challenges, setting aside sort of the financial piece, has been something that has been talked about. Maybe not a lot, maybe not prominently, but it's also been out there with that facilities master plan and certainly before. I know that you've recently shared your thoughts with some of the community, the select board and the finance committee around Now that you're settling in here, your longer term vision for our school buildings. For those that maybe haven't had a chance to hear you speak about that, I was wondering if you could share a little bit with viewers around what you're thinking, again, as it relates to school facilities going forward.
Sure. I mean, I think um, the idea of consolidation puts the town on a track to have 4 school buildings. So a high school, a middle school, and 2 pre-K through 5 elementary schools. Um, so right now, we are looking at a middle school that was built around 2000. It's fully paid off, and is even though I think most people still refer to it as the new middle school, it's a middle-aged middle school.
That's right.
About 25 years old. We've got a relatively new high school that was built back in the mid-teens, 2013, I think. Was when
I think it opened in 2015, but yep.
So we've got the upper half of
Yes.
the schools in relatively modern facilities. I think there's a rational plan that gets the town to having those 4 schools on a reasonable timeline without overburdening our folks with taxes. And I think that's the real question people have is, how are we going to pay for this?
Sure.
So right now we are currently, I think about 12 years in to our payment of the high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be paid off in 2036. We are proposing a debt exclusion for the new elementary school. That would be a 30-year note. If we borrowed it in 2026, we'd pay that off in 2056. I have a plan to be able to pay for the second elementary school, the elementary school that would replace the 3 schools on the west side, without having to raise taxes, and that is because we have a one-time opportunity in the mid 2030s when towns who have been required by the state to pay off our outstanding pension liability will finish making those payments. And those payments by that time, I mean, I think this year it's about $13 million, 12 or $13 million. It's probably going to be a similar number, maybe a little bit larger in the mid 2030s. But we'll have a bulk of spending that we have to make one year to pay off that pension liability, and the next year we won't have that bill. So if we do our timing right and get into MSO, we go through our current project, we build this proposed elementary school at the north site. That's kind of scheduled to be in the 28-29 completion date range. And in the early 2030s, we go back to MSBA and we get in the program again. We'll likely have to start paying off the debt for that right around 2036, when 2 things will happen. Number 1, the debt for the high school will drop off of
Right.
our balance sheet, and number 2, the will be gone. So we're going to have a pool of available cash, funds in the general fund that we could expend to pay down a loan for a new elementary school without raising taxes through a debt exclusion. If we do that, and I know I've said it to some people and they feel like I'm looking too far ahead, but then we're on track to, in 2056, when the north site elementary school is paid off, that would be just about the time we'd be looking to take on debt for a revamp or rebuild of the middle school.
Right.
It'll be
Right.
a little over 50 years old at that
That's
point in
right.
time. And then in 2066, after a 30-year note that started in 2036, the high school will be 50 years old. And so I think it's important that we think about this as a process where
Right.
we will be in the business of building and maintaining schools for as long as Wilmington exists. And so if you understand, if the goal is to try and, um, uh, borrow for this school now, we wouldn't have to borrow again for a school project until, for a new school project until the 2050s. And that would be kind of the kind of timeline that would allow us to do a lot of planning and a lot of preparation, and get us onto a cycle where these are understood and accepted expenses that we're just going to have to do. But I do think it's definitely doable.
Well, I want to thank you for outlining that, and I think I can safely speak for many to say just thank you for sort of raising this as part of the overall plan and consideration. And while it's obviously a vision that you've shared as yours, and an awful lot of folks have to get behind it. One of the things that I think I've struggled with in my role and capacity as superintendent of schools is that missing piece around what's the plan for the facilities, understanding that there are lots of other facilities that, of course, have to be attended to. And you mentioned the library and the other, not to in any way prioritize school facilities over and above anything else, but where do they fit in the mix of a plan, a longer term plan, and even if it's multiple decades. And I think that that's important, and I think I can speak for many to say thank you for just raising sort of the attention and awareness to this as something that needs to have a lot more conversation, but at least it's on the table. It hasn't been on the table, sort of, so to speak, in my time here, and so I'm appreciative of you, putting forth and bringing attention to this. So back to this project, though, the proposed elementary school project that is, with the building committee's agreement and support, would bring together the Wildwood, the Woburn Street in the north under one roof, pre-K to 5 elementary school, and attend to sort of in an immediacy bringing much needed improvements for the teaching and learning spaces should the project move forward. The school building committee has affirmed that and selected this as the preferred option. The Mass School Building Authority has embraced that as a preferred option and understands that that's a project that they could also get behind if everything else falls into place. But it's not done yet. It's certainly there's some important things that have to happen. For those that haven't been following this project, could you just share with viewers what still needs to happen to really greenlight this project for the future of elementary education in Wilmington?
Sure. So there's several key dates that are, some of which are coming out relatively quickly and some of which are happening at the end of the summer. So by May 1st, our team of consultants will submit the final schematic design to the MSBA. That begins a process of a couple of months of review and negotiation, discussion between the town and our experts and the state via the MSBA over what exact portions of the project are considered to be reimbursable, which means they're eligible for this grant,
Sure.
the MSBA grant, which is the reimbursable portion of the costs. And that final number will be voted on June 25th by the MSBA. And they will, at that point in time, they'll say, yes, we approve of your budget, and this is the amount of money that we're committing from the state to help offset those costs. That doesn't end it. That's at that point in time, we'll know the numbers, and then this goes before the town in September. There are two crucial dates for folks to know. The first is September 13th, which is the date of a special town meeting to approve the school project. And the second is September 16th, where there will be a ballot question to approve the debt exclusion that will be required to finance the project. So those two dates were really critical. We thought a lot about when to schedule those dates, and we tried to leadership team, of which you and I are both a part of, made the decision to try and schedule it after Labor Day so that folks would be back in town. We weren't trying to, have it during the summer when people might be out of town on vacation. Post Labor Day, most folks are back to their regularly scheduled work and school life, and that would give everybody the opportunity to participate in those votes in town, which I think is a really crucial thing.
Yeah, thank you for walking through that, and certainly for those in the community, there will be an awful lot of information and reminders coming your way. I know the building committee and a subgroup of that is working very hard to make sure that people in the community are well aware of all of what's involved in the project and those key dates that you certainly cited. And I know within the school system, we'll be working hard to make sure that our parents and guardians, members of the community are aware as well, especially, as you say, when school gets started. But the opportunity to bring this before folks once they get back from vacation, summer break, and school is back in session. Well, Eric, thank you for taking the time to join me today, and thank you for your partnership over the last soon to be a year. You've been a great partner for the district and for the building committee, and I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and the folks about these things.
Thank you. Thank you, Wilmington, for joining. Until next time, take care and be well.